My parents cut me out of their will, but I found my own inheritance. Imagine discovering your entire life of loyalty meant nothing. Get ready for a tale of betrayal, hidden secrets, and a shocking twist. Hey everyone, I'm Leo, 32, and for most of my adult life, I played the part of the rock solid son. Not the golden child, mind you. That title belonged squarely to my younger sister Chloe, but I was the one who quietly picked up the slack. I'd pay the overdue bills without being asked, quietly cover the mortgage when Dad lost his job, and shoulder every expense from groceries to utilities for 2 years when Mom's temporary illness turned into a long-term struggle. I never complained. I didn't make a big deal out of it. I just helped, because that's what I thought family meant. Loyalty, sacrifice, showing up even when no one claps for you. I never realized how incredibly one-sided it was until a few months ago. It was a Thursday, just like any other ordinary day, when something massive happens, and you don't even know it yet. I'd just gotten home from work, still in my button-down shirt, microwaving some leftovers, when my phone buzzed. It was a message from my cousin, Sarah. Just a simple, "Hey, sorry to hear about the will. That's brutal." I stared at it for a second, my mind completely blank. What will? A second later, she sent a blurry photo of some official-looking paperwork. I recognized my dad's familiar handwriting and my mom's signature. My fingers suddenly felt cold as I slowly scrolled through the image. It was real. My parents had finalized their will a few weeks earlier, without a single word to me. And every last thing they owned, from the house I'd helped save from foreclosure to the small lake cabin my grandfather built, had been left entirely to Chloe. My name wasn't even mentioned. Not a single word. Not even a token gesture like, "Leo receives the old bookshelf he built as a teen." Nothing. It was as if I didn't exist. At first I told myself there had to be a mistake. Surely they just hadn't updated it, or maybe they assumed Chloe would share things with me. I called. No answer. I texted Mom. "Hey, can we talk for a second?" It showed as read, but there was no reply. That whole night, I paced my apartment, that awful photo burning into my brain. I thought of all the times I said no to hanging out with friends, or buying myself something nice, just to make sure their lights stayed on. I thought of the envelopes of cash I quietly slid into their mailbox when their pride wouldn't let them ask for help directly. And now, I didn't even warrant a mention. 3 days later, I finally got my answer. Mom called while I was at work. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was short, almost casual. "Hey Leo, sorry I've been busy. We were going to tell you about the will, but it just made sense to keep things simple. Chloe's the one with a family and she's, well, stable. You're doing fine, right? Call me later." Her tone somehow made it worse. Not cruel, just completely dismissive. Like it was a perfectly logical decision. Like I wasn't owed anything. Not even a real explanation. That night, I sat at my desk with a notepad. I wrote down every single bill I'd been paying: electricity, water, Wi Fi, trash pickup, even the streaming service account they'd long since stopped contributing to, but still used. I calculated how much I'd spent over the last year alone. It came to just over $8,000, and that didn't even include the random groceries or gas money I'd chipped in. And then I realized something profound. I wasn't just the good son. I was the unpaid caretaker, the safety net, the backup plan they never acknowledged but always, always counted on. I didn't explode. I didn't send an angry text. I just stopped. Quietly. Deliberately. I removed my card from their utility autopay system. I canceled the streaming services. I let the overdue notices do the talking. At first there was silence. A week passed. Then two. Then, one Monday morning, I woke up to a text from Mom. No greeting. No pleasantries. Just, "Power's about to get shut off. Did you forget to pay again?" Again? Like it was my job. Like I had dropped the ball on an assignment I was never thanked for doing in the first place. I stared at it for a long time. I thought about replying with a lengthy lecture, something sharp and articulate, but instead, I typed one word: no. Then I blocked her number. The calls didn't stop, of course. She tried using Dad's phone, then Chloe's. Even a couple of old friends I hadn't heard from in ages suddenly remembered I existed. I ignored them all. My email inbox filled with vague, guilt-laced messages. "You know they're struggling." This isn't you, Leo. Family doesn't turn their back. One message actually ended with, "Don't be dramatic." But none of them had seen that will. None of them had heard the casual way Mom said, "You're doing fine." As if success was a disqualifier for decency. As if the minute I stopped needing them, they stopped seeing me as their son and started treating me like a tool. Something useful, something replaceable. About 2 weeks after I blocked her, I got a voicemail from Chloe. I hadn't spoken to her much since college. She was always the favorite, always the good one. But we never really clicked. Her voice was cheerful at first, then it turned oddly assuming. "Hey Leo, so I heard there's been a little miscommunication. Mom and Dad are kind of in a tough spot, and I figured maybe you could be a sweetheart and help out for a bit. I'm just so swamped with the kids, you know. Anyway, they really need the water turned back on. I told them you'd come around." I didn't reply, but that phrase, "I told them you'd come around," stayed with me. Because it wasn't a plea. It wasn't even a question. It was an assumption. That was the moment I realized how deep it ran. It wasn't just that they favored her, it was that they truly believed I existed to serve them. That no matter what they did or didn't do, I would be there. I would pick up the pieces. I would pay the bills, because that's who I'd always been. Not a son, not an equal, but a resource. So I decided to change that. But not with words, not with explanations, not with more sacrifices. No, this time I had something much better in mind. And it started with a quiet visit to the county records office. I showed up at the county records office on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day where everything felt heavy, the sky, the air, even your own thoughts. I hadn't told anyone where I was going. I didn't take the day off work. I just left during my lunch break, my jacket zipped high and my hands stuffed in my pockets. The place was quiet. A few retirees scanning through property documents, a young couple whispering about marriage certificates. I walked up to the front desk and asked for the clerk who handled property records. The woman behind the counter barely looked up. "Purpose?" she mumbled. "Looking into a house deed. My parents," I said, keeping my voice neutral. She handed me a request form. "Address." I wrote it out carefully. The house I'd helped save 3 separate times. The same one I'd mowed the lawn for in my 20s when Dad threw his back out. The one I'd painted, power washed, and winterized when they couldn't afford maintenance. The house they'd now left entirely to Chloe. No caveats, no mention of shared ownership. No thank you. 10 minutes later, she handed me the file. Their mortgage had been refinanced twice in the last 6 years. The remaining balance wasn't massive, but it wasn't tiny either. And there it was, in black and white. My name wasn't listed anywhere on the deed, not even as a beneficiary, just my parents, and a line stating it would pass to Chloe upon both their deaths. I stared at that sentence for a while, then folded the file and slid it back across the counter. I didn't need a copy. I didn't need proof. I just needed clarity. On the way back to the office, I stopped at the bank. I wasn't sure what compelled me to do it right then, but something in me wanted to finish the clean break. Chloe and I had shared an old joint account from when we briefly tried to launch a business together. She'd begged me to keep it open in case we ever gave it another shot. I'd left it with just a few $100s in it, mostly forgotten. But when I checked the transaction history, I nearly laughed out loud. For the last 6 months, she'd been quietly transferring that money into her personal account. Small amounts, $25 here, $40 there, as if I wouldn't notice, as if I wouldn't care. I emptied the account, closed it, and flagged the activity. Not to get her in trouble, just to send a quiet message. "I'm not your safety net." Then came the real step, a conversation I had been avoiding for a long time. I called a lawyer, not the kind of flashy billboard lawyer with a grin that made your skin crawl. A quiet, middle-aged woman named Lena who came highly recommended by a colleague. We sat in her office over cups of lukewarm coffee while I laid everything out. The will, the bills, bulls, the years of financial support with no paper trail. "I'm not looking to sue them," I clarified. "I just want to protect myself legally, financially, emotionally." She nodded slowly. "There's a lot we can do. First, let's talk about boundaries. Then, about documentation. You've been acting as their financial caregiver for years. If they try to guilt you into resuming that role, You'll need clean, firm records of what you did and when you stopped. It was like she read my mind. She helped me draft a formal letter, one I never thought I'd send. It politely, professionally stated that I was no longer responsible for any bills, debts, or obligations related to my parents' property. It didn't include accusations. It didn't carry bitterness, just facts sealed with a notary stamp. I mailed it. Certified delivery. Signature required. 3 days later, Chloe called me at work. I let it ring. She called again, then Mom, then Dad. The voicemails grew increasingly frantic. Leo, why are you doing this to us? We didn't mean anything by it. Just talk to us. Then came the one that really hit me. It was Chloe. Her voice lower this time, less chirpy, more desperate. Mom says they might have to sell the house. They can't afford all this, Leo. You know that. I can't take them in. I have my own kids. She paused. You were always the one who helped. You're the only one who ever really kept this family together. Please just help them through the winter. That sentence. You were always the one who helped. Not appreciated, not loved, not respected. Used. That's when the real shift happened. The emotional one. I wasn't angry anymore. Not like before. The betrayal had been sharp at first, but now it was dull. A splinter left in too long, slowly numbing the skin. What I felt now wasn't rage. It was a quiet resolve. A curtain falling, a voice inside me finally speaking clearly. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. The silence I gave them after that wasn't cruel. It was closure. But things didn't end there because a week later, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten, no return address. The handwriting shaky but familiar. It was from Dad. And inside was a message that changed everything. The envelope was thin. Too thin for what it carried. When I first saw it in my mailbox, plain white, no return address, just my name in trembling handwriting, I almost tossed it. Part of me assumed it was just another plea, or worse, an attempt to guilt me back into the role I'd walked away from. But something made me open it. Maybe it was the uneven way my name was written, like the pen had been clutched too tightly. Or maybe it was that eerie silence that had followed Chloe's last voicemail. A silence that didn't feel like surrender, but strategy. Inside was a single sheet of paper, lined, torn from one of those cheap spiral notebooks Dad always had stacked near the TV. The ink had bled slightly on a few words, like it had been written slowly, with pauses. It read, Leo, I don't expect you to forgive us. I'm not sure we deserve it. Your mother made the decision about the will. She said it was simpler to leave everything to Chloe. She thought you wouldn't care, because you have your own life. I let her do it. That was my failure. I saw the copy of the letter your lawyer sent, and I understand now what it means, what you've done for us. I don't even know how to begin thanking you. You paid for things without complaint. You never asked for recognition. You just showed up. I let that go unnoticed for too long. I also know this letter probably won't change anything. But there's something you should know. My eyes stopped there. I reread that last line a few times before continuing. The letter continued on the back. Your grandfather left something for you, and your mother never told you about it. He left you the cabin, the one by the lake. He signed the transfer papers before he passed, but your mother said it was better to keep it in the family name until you were ready. Then, when the new will was written, she told the lawyer to consolidate everything under Chloe. I didn't object. That's on me. But the cabin wasn't hers to take. I kept a copy of the transfer. I hid it in the attic in the metal box behind the insulation. Do what you want with it. I don't expect to hear back. I'm sorry, Dad. I sat there in my car for almost an hour, the letter resting on my steering wheel, the engine off, the world strangely quiet around me. There was no anger this time, no rising heartbeat, just a stillness, a clarity. It all clicked into place. The missing paperwork, the way Mom insisted we never talk about the cabin in front of other family. The time Chloe randomly brought it up at Christmas 2 years ago. It'll be great when we can remodel the lake house after, everything's settled. And I just assumed she was talking about someday far in the future. Apparently she already thought it was hers. The metal box, the attic, the insulation. I drove straight there. The house was as unremarkable as always. A faded lawn chair sat by the porch, tilted at an angle that suggested no one had used it in weeks. The blinds were drawn, but I could see a light on in the hallway through a thin gap. I didn't knock. I still had the spare key, of course. I did. Inside it smelled faintly like old coffee and dust. The kind of smell that lives in every childhood memory, no matter how much you try to bleach it away. No one was home. That was luck. Or maybe fate. I didn't care which. I climbed the stairs slowly, the letter still in my pocket. The attic door groaned like it hadn't been opened in years. I pulled down the ladder, climbed up, and was hit by a wave of warm, stale air. It was exactly how I remembered it. Cluttered, forgotten, full of half-labeled boxes and old seasonal decorations no one bothered to throw out. The insulation was on the far side near the chimney stack. I dug behind it, my fingers itching from the fiberglass. And there it was. A dented metal box. I yanked it out. The latch was old, but not locked. Inside were a few yellowed papers, a couple of black and white photos of my grandfather in his younger years, and folded neatly, the deed transfer. My name, his signature, the date. He'd signed it 3 weeks before his stroke. The cabin had been mine all along, and Mom had buried it. I didn't know what to feel in that moment. Not rage, not triumph, just numbness. A strange sense of grief. For the years I'd spent thinking I had no real place in the family legacy. For all the times I believed them when they acted like I should just be grateful to have my own life. For letting myself feel guilty for pulling away when I'd done more than any of them ever had. I took the papers, all of them, slid them into a folder I found nearby. Then I locked the attic behind me, returned the ladder, and left the house exactly as I'd found it. I didn't leave a note. That evening, I drove out to the lake. I hadn't been there in almost 10 years. The cabin looked smaller than I remembered, and the porch sagged a little more, but it was still standing, still quiet, still mine. I stood at the edge of the water as the sun began to set, the folder tucked under my arm, and realized something I hadn't felt in years: peace. But that feeling didn't last long because 2 days later, Chloe showed up at my apartment. And she was furious. She showed up just before noon on a Saturday. I had been planning to drive out to the cabin again that afternoon, start taking inventory, maybe make a list of what needed fixing before the fall. But the sharp, rapid knocks on my door cut through my morning like a blade. I knew it was her before I even looked through the peephole. Chloe always knocked like that, like the world owed her attention right this second. I debated not answering, but something told me this was it. The confrontation I'd been waiting for, or maybe avoiding. I opened the door slowly, keeping my expression flat. She was already mid-rant. "You went through Mom and Dad's things." No hello, no pretense. She was wearing a windbreaker and sunglasses, even though it wasn't sunny. Her jaw was clenched so tight I could practically hear her teeth grinding. I didn't respond, just opened the door wider and stepped aside. She walked in like she owned the place. They woke up and the attic was a mess. Do you know how freaked out they were? And you took the box? Seriously, what? You just sneak around now like some kind of... Chloe. That stopped her. I don't think I'd ever spoken to her like that. Calm, cold, not angry, just done. She blinked. "Excuse me?" she asked. "Sit down." To my surprise, she did. Mostly, I think, because I wasn't reacting. And Chloe thrived on reaction. I grabbed the folder from the kitchen counter, set it down on the table between us, and slid it toward her. "Take a look." She opened it like she expected to find a prank inside. Her eyes scanned the deed transfer. Then again, then again. Silence stretched out. Finally she said, This doesn't... It was supposed to be part of the estate." "It wasn't, but Mom said..." "Yeah, Mom says a lot of things." Her head jerked up. I leaned forward, hands clasped. "Grandpa left me the cabin. He signed it over before he passed, and Mom kept it hidden. You rewrote the will with her, didn't you? Helped her simplify it." Chloe didn't respond, but her jaw twitched again. "You thought I'd never find out. Just like with the bank account, the slow siphoning. You thought I'd never check." "You didn't care about the cabin," she snapped. "You never even went up there. You moved out, started your fancy job, left us all behind." "You mean I built a life?" She scoffed, crossing her arms. "You always act like you're some martyr, like you did everything. Newsflash, Leo, we all struggled. You think it's easy raising two kids on a teacher's salary? You think it's easy being the one mom and dad lean on emotionally? I stared at her. Emotionally, Chloe? I paid their mortgage. I covered their utility bills. I gave up vacations, holidays, time with my friends for years to make sure they didn't lose that house. And what did I get in return? She didn't answer. I didn't need her to. I stood up and walked over to my desk drawer, pulled out a second letter, the one from the lawyer, and laid it beside the deed. You're not getting the cabin. You're not getting a dime of anything I paid for. And Mom and Dad, they're adults. If they want help, they can ask me like adults. But that part of my life, the part where I let everyone treat me like the backup plan, is over. Chloe opened her mouth, but I cut her off. No more. You don't get to show up and demand anything from me, especially not something that was stolen. She sat in silence for a moment, her hands fidgeting with the edge of the folder, then quietly, "They're scared, you know." I nodded. "They should be. They might lose the house. Ironic." Her voice cracked. "Leo, come on! I know we weren't close growing up, but we're still family." Were we? She blinked again, hard, like she was actually surprised I said that. I continued, my voice even. "I was good enough when you needed money. When Mom needed someone to pay the credit card. When Dad needed a ride to the hospital. But when it came time to write down names on a piece of paper that actually meant something, suddenly I didn't exist." "You're overreacting." "No," I said firmly. "You're underestimating how much I was willing to do, and how little you all thought it was worth." She stood up, folder still in her hand. "So what? You're just cutting everyone off?" "I already have. You're just late to the realization." The room felt heavy after that. She lingered for a second longer, as if waiting for me to say something that would soften it, something that would let her off the hook. But I didn't. She walked out without another word. The click of the door behind her was the most peaceful sound I'd heard in weeks. A month passed. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Mom and Dad tried to refinance the house again and were denied. Something about a missed payment and an old account closure flagging the system. They were considering selling, downsizing into something smaller. They didn't reach out. I didn't offer. Chloe sent a single text, one sentence. "You really went through with it." I didn't reply. Instead, I spent that weekend at the cabin. I'd brought tools, sandpaper, a paint roller, supplies from the hardware store. Fixing it up was slow, quiet, healing. Every squeaky floorboard I tightened, every crooked door I realigned. It all felt like reclaiming something that had been taken, not just from me, but about me. Control, self-worth, peace. I hung Grandpa's old fishing rod back on the wall above the fireplace. I found an old photo of him and me from when I was maybe 8, holding up 2 tiny sunfish like we'd caught whales. I framed it. By the time autumn came, the leaves around the lake turned gold, and the air smelled like pine and wood smoke. I realized something profound. I didn't miss them. Not the way I thought I would. Because what I'd really mourned all this time wasn't my family. It was the idea of what family was supposed to be. Loyal, supportive, loving. And now I was building something of my own. Not with guilt, not with obligation, but with choice. And that, I realized, was worth more than any inheritance they could have left. This story is a powerful reminder that self-worth isn't determined by others' recognition. If you've ever felt undervalued, hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. And for more tales of shocking family betrayals, check out our Family Feuds playlist.